He was once untouchable, music mogul, industry kingmaker, a man who built empires, crushed competition, and moved like a ghost through scandal after scandal. Until now. What just happened in that courtroom has people asking, is this the beginning of Diddy's downfall? Because what we saw was not just a legal defense unraveling, it was a meltdown, a collapse in real time. A multi-millionaire mogul turning on his own lawyers, screaming, snarling, cussing them out in front of everyone. A man visibly losing control. And it all happened while the eyes of the world were on him. This isn't just another celebrity trial. This is personal, it's raw, it's chaotic, and the details leaking out from the courtroom are more disturbing than anyone expected. Secret. Rituals, failed cover-ups, jealousy games, and a pattern of control that's finally being exposed. All while Diddy himself seems to be spiraling. So what exactly is happening inside that courtroom? Why are even his own attorneys shaken? And how did a superstar once surrounded by silence and loyalty become the center of one of the most bizarre public breakdowns in recent memory? Let's take you inside because what happened next? No one saw coming. From the very first moments of cross-examination, something felt off. Diddy's legal team walked into that courtroom with stacks of text messages, confident they could break Cassie down. But what unfolded? A complete disaster. Instead of poking holes in her testimony, they ended up proving her right over and over. Message after message shown to the jury as if they were some kind of smoking gun, only to fall flat, or worse, backfire completely. Many of the messages simply confirmed what Cassie had already said. Others were so out of context, irrelevant, that they left the courtroom confused. It was sloppy, disorganized, the kind of strategy that feels rushed and desperate. And while the defense hoped to paint Cassie as inconsistent or manipulative, what they actually did was highlight their own lack of preparation. Observers inside the courtroom noticed it instantly. Legal analysts began whispering that this team wasn't ready, that they were playing catch-up, and more importantly, that Diddy's millions weren't buying him the bulletproof defense he thought he'd get. And then they made it worse. Desperate for something that would stick, they pivoted to a wild accusation, something that would dominate headlines but do nothing to help their case. And that's when the phrase drug-laced baby oil entered the courtroom. Yes, you heard that right. As if the trial wasn't already intense, Diddy's defense decided to ask Cassie about drug-laced baby oil, allegedly used during something they called freak-offs. It sounded more like a bizarre headline from a tabloid than a serious legal strategy. Cassie didn't flinch. She calmly said that during their relationship, there was never any drug-laced baby oil. Just like that, the entire line of questioning backfired right in the defense's face. Why bring this up? It had nothing to do with the charges, it didn't. Discredit Cassie. If anything, it looked like a cheap attempt to shock the jury and distract from the bigger picture, but in reality, all it did was draw even more attention to the twisted, degrading world she claimed to be trapped in. Because, if you've heard the term freak off before in this case, you know it's no joke. These weren't wild parties. They were allegedly orchestrated events where Cassie was forced to perform intimate acts, sometimes with strangers, sometimes with hired escorts, under the influence of drugs, pain, and fear. She testified about open wounds, vaginal injuries, and the emotional damage that lasted for years. And now, the defense was trying to reduce all of that to a punchline, a gimmick, something that might trend for a few hours, but has nothing to do with proving innocence. Instead of undermining Cassie's testimony, it only made her look more credible, calm, collected, unbothered by the smear tactics, like someone who had already lived through the worst of it. But while Cassie stayed composed, someone else in that courtroom was reaching a breaking point, and it wasn't the prosecution. It didn't take long for the pressure to boil over. After the defense team was reprimanded by the judge for stalling and submitting hundreds of last-minute documents, the tension in the room was thick. But no one expected what came next. Diddy snapped. Witnesses say that during a brief recess, Diddy stood apart from his own attorneys, arms crossed, fuming, glaring. His million-dollar legal team stood several feet away, too afraid or too smart to get close. And then one by one, he called them over and tore into them. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't being discreet. He was snarling, cussing, and openly berating the very people who were supposed to be defending him. You could see it in his face. Rage, frustration, and the unmistakable look of a man who felt everything slipping out of his hands. This wasn't some isolated emotional moment. This was a full-on meltdown. According to multiple reports, Diddy called his lawyers names, used slurs, and blamed them for the trial falling apart. And remember, these are high-powered, top-tier attorneys. The kind of people who usually run the room. But in that moment, even they looked small. The irony, Diddy's outburst wasn't just unprofessional, it was visible to everyone, including the jury. In a case that hinges on allegations of control, manipulation, and abuse, this was visual confirmation. Even under the pressure of a CEO courtroom, he was still trying to dominate everyone around him, even his own legal team. And if that wasn't enough to shake things up, what he did next pushed the chaos into overdrive. If Diddy thought he could intimidate his way through this trial, he clearly underestimated one person in that courtroom, the judge. Because when the defense team tried to excuse their delays, saying they needed more time to cross-examine Cassie, even after submitting 400 exhibits overnight, the judge didn't just push back. He snapped. "You told me you'd be done by Friday," the judge barked, cutting off their excuses. He accused the defense of playing games, of trying to run out the clock to limit the prosecution's follow-up, and he wasn't buying. The idea that a potential life sentence was an excuse to drag the trial on forever. The judge had a point. Cassie, visibly pregnant and nearing her due date, couldn't be on the stand for days on end. The trial was already expected to stretch for 8 to 10 weeks, and the court couldn't afford any more delays. The courtroom had rules, and Diddy, no matter how rich or powerful, wasn't above them. The ruling was swift and brutal. The defense had only one more morning to finish cross-examining Cassie. No extensions, no excuses. And just like that, the defense's window to tear. Downer testimony started closing fast. Their chaotic, unfocused questioning had eaten up precious time, and now they had no room left to recover. But here's the part that matters most. This entire collapse wasn't just bad strategy. It revealed something deeper. A legal team scrambling to make a case where there might not be one. A defendant who couldn't sit back and let the professionals do their job. And a courtroom that was slowly, steadily turning against him. And then Diddy made the most desperate move of all. He decided he would take over the defense. When the defense started falling apart, Diddy didn't just lose his temper. He tried to seize control. Midway through the trial, witnesses say he began passing notes to his attorneys, scribbling down questions, barking whispered orders, and directing how the cross-examination should go, as if he were the lead counsel instead of the defendant. And what happened next was a train wreck in real time. His lead attorney, clearly rattled, kept pausing mid-question to consult with Diddy. You could feel the tension. The pacing broke down. The rhythm of the courtroom was gone. And the questions, scattered, weak, often irrelevant, because they were coming from someone whose main strategy seemed to be throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It got so chaotic that the attorney had to change her line of questioning on the fly, adjusting to Diddy's handwritten demands. The result? A defense that looked unfocused, unprepared, and completely out of sync. And the worst part, the jury saw it all. They saw Diddy trying to dominate the very people defending him. They saw a man used to control, desperately clinging to it in the worst possible moment. Instead of looking like a misunderstood defendant, he came across as a manipulator even in court. Someone who couldn't help but micromanage, bully, and assert power, even when it was sabotaging his own case. His interference didn't make the defense stronger. It made it crumble even faster. But Diddy wasn't done. Next, he wanted to change the narrative and started reaching deep into the past to drag up old wounds, including one he thought would finally turn the jury against Cassie, but it didn't go the way he expected. When nothing else seemed to work, Diddy's team made a desperate pivot, accused Cassie of cheating. They brought up her brief relationship with rapper Kid Cudi, trying to paint her as unfaithful, hoping to cast doubt on her credibility. But the moment she responded, the strategy fell apart, because Cassie made it crystal clear. They weren't even together when she dated Cudi. Their relationship with Diddy had been on again, off again for years. During one of those off periods, she dated Kid Cudi for just a month. Meanwhile, Diddy was openly seeing other women, orchestrating freak-offs, and allegedly forcing Cassie into disturbing situations involving other men. And now the defense wanted to talk about her loyalty. It didn't add up, not even close. Cassie responded bluntly, "I didn't cheat, we were broken up." She went further, explaining how Diddy's behavior wasn't just unfaithful, it was deeply manipulative. He controlled everything from who she saw to what she did, often under the influence of drugs and fear. Trying to reduce all that trauma to a jealous fling wasn't just weak, it was tone deaf. But this moment revealed something deeper. Diddy wasn't trying to build a legal defense. He was settling personal scores. He wanted the jury to hear about how he felt betrayed, about how she hurt him, as if that would somehow erase years of coercion and abuse. And if the goal was to make Cassie look like the villain, it backfired. All it did was show just how far Diddy was willing to go to avoid facing his own actions. But he wasn't done digging into the past. Next, his team pulled out the old text messages, ones they claimed showed a jealous, obsessive Cassie. What they really revealed was something much darker. In a last-ditch effort to shake Cassie's credibility, Diddy's defense pulled out a stack of old text messages, some dating all the way back to 2009. They claimed these messages showed Cassie was irrationally jealous, insecure, maybe even unstable, but once again, it backfired. One of the texts read, "You are not Bruce Willis. We've been together for how long? And the kids. Chance is allowed to go on vacation without her mother, so why can't I be there? Unless there's something I don't know about going on between you and Kim." The defense argued this was a woman spiraling with jealousy. But when Cassie took the stand, she explained it for what it really was. A desperate plea for clarity in a relationship built on emotional games. At the time, Diddy had multiple children with different women. Kim Porter, his longtime ex, shared twins with him. Chance, another daughter, came from a different relationship, one that overlapped with Kim's pregnancy. Vacations were happening, blended families were forming, but Cassie, the woman by his side, was constantly left out of the picture. To her, this wasn't about jealousy, it was about wanting respect, a defined role, a seat at the table, but instead, she said she always felt like she was chasing him, trying to prove her worth in a world he controlled. And then came another bombshell, a message where Cassie told Diddy, "I feel like you're making me a side chick. I'll still treat you like a king though, no matter what." The defense saw this as proof that Cassie accepted her role, maybe even liked it, but her response was powerful. She said that message came from a time when she felt undervalued, pushed aside, humiliated. Diddy had appeared in public with another woman, Gina Huyn, while Cassie was still in the picture. She wasn't being jealous, she was being erased. And just when things couldn't get more tangled, we found out something even stranger. Gina Huyn, the very woman Cassie felt replaced by, was supposed to be victim number 3 in this trial. But right before things kicked off, she vanished. She was supposed to be one of the prosecution's most powerful voices. Victim number 3. Now her name, Gina Huyn. The same woman Diddy paraded around publicly. The same woman Cassie once feared was replacing her. And the same woman who had years earlier gone on record with horrifying claims. In a 2018 interview, Gina opened up about her time with Diddy. She described the relationship as abusive. She said he hit her, that he kicked her in the stomach while she was pregnant, that the violence was constant, the control suffocating. She even mentioned the same freak-offs Cassie testified about, suggesting this wasn't an isolated pattern, but a deeply embedded routine. But then, right before the trial began, Gina disappeared. The prosecution couldn't reach her. Her own attorney said they'd lost contact. The feds tried too. Nothing. Just silence. One of the most critical witnesses suddenly off the grid. No explanation. No trace, and the timing couldn't have been more suspicious. Was she intimidated? Paid off? Threatened? Or did she simply get cold feet? No one knows for sure. But what's clear is this. Her absence left a massive hole in the prosecution's case and raised even more questions about just how far Diddy's influence still reaches. Even more bizarre. After everything Gina went through and everything she said, she reportedly continued to see Diddy well into 2022 and 2023. During that time, another woman stepped into the spotlight, rapper Young Miami, who proudly claimed Diddy as hers. And the two women? They weren't quiet about it. They went to war, publicly. While the courtroom painted a picture of trauma, control, and abuse, outside those walls, a very different show was playing out. One that made everything feel even more surreal. Two women, Gina, Huyin, and Young Miami, were locked in a public, messy fight over Diddy. On social media, they traded jabs, subtle posts, not so subtle captions, even shared photos with him just days apart. It was a strange love triangle playing out in real time, even as Diddy faced the most serious allegations of his life. But then came the moment that made it all feel like a twisted circus. Diddy stood on stage at an awards show, dressed to impress. Cameras flashing, crowd cheering, and out of nowhere he thanked Cassie, said he wouldn't be where he was without her, praised her strength, her support, as if they were friendly exes who had simply grown apart. But behind the scenes, Cassie had already filed her lawsuit. She was married now, a mother of two, living a life completely removed from the world he was pretending to still share with her. And in the crowd that night, Young Miami proudly holding up a giant sign that read, "Go Daddy." If it wasn't caught on camera, no one would believe it. Meanwhile, photos surfaced of Diddy and Gina, cuddled up, cozy, intimate. No signs of tension, no trace of the abuse she once described, just more fuel for the fire. And the internet did what it always does. It ran with it. Meme after meme, comment after comment, it all went viral. But beneath the headlines and hashtags was something darker. Why were these women still fighting over a man who had allegedly hurt them all? Was it fame, money, fear, or something even deeper, something harder to name? And the courtroom tells one story, the public tells another, but somewhere in the middle is the truth. For years, Diddy was the man who couldn't be touched. A music mogul with platinum hits, celebrity connections, and a public image built on power, charisma, and success. But now, that image is cracking. What the world is witnessing in that courtroom isn't just a celebrity on trial. It's a man unraveling. A man who, when cornered, lashed out at his own team. A man so used to controlling everyone around him, he couldn't stop himself from trying to control a federal courtroom. A man who may have spent decades behind closed doors, operating by his own rules until now. This trial has pulled back the curtain. It's exposed a pattern of behavior that goes far beyond Cassie, from missing witnesses to disturbing allegations of manipulation, violence, and sexual coercion. The stories are stacking up, and the cracks in his defense are getting harder to hide. But what happens next? That's the question everyone's asking. Will Diddy finally be held accountable? Will more victims come forward? Or will power, money, and influence once again rewrite the ending? One thing is certain, the man who built an empire now stands at the edge of collapse. And what happens in the weeks to come could change everything, not just for him, but for an entire industry that protected him for far too long. Make sure you're subscribed because this isn't over, not even close.